Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, and this is your podcast for leadership, inspiration, and impact. And today will be no different. Joining me today from Atlanta, Georgia, Adam Guard. And let me give him a proper introduction. Adam is the founder of Dreamer Cigars, a brand built on education, authenticity, and unapologetic storytelling. What started as a backyard TikTok review turned into 200 million views, a global audience, and a company that's preserving cigar culture in a new way. He's also the co-founder of ourhealth.com, a digital wellness platform reshaping how people engage with their health. Adam's journey is raw, from former teacher, real estate investor, and football coach turned entrepreneur. He's built a brand without selling out, turned down the easy money, and even partnered on his custom cigar with Dennis Rodman. The worm. We're definitely going to talk about that. This isn't about playing it safe. It's about leading boldly, living aligned, and building something that actually matters. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Josh. I'm so happy to be here, and it was way too generous of an introduction. I feel like I'm still just figuring it all out.
Well, you're doing it right today. You got the cigar in hand, sitting in a nice spot down in Atlanta with windows open, birds chirping. You're doing it right, my friend.
This is the lounge in the back of my house. Yeah, I built this about a year and a half ago.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We have a couple different spots here on the property, a walk-in humidor that I built out. But yeah, having a great lounge that you can connect with others, smoke a great cigar, and have some great laughs is one of life's blessings. All right. So you've worn a lot of hats. I introduced you with that, right? So teacher, football coach, real estate investor, now entrepreneur. Walk us through your background and how those experiences shaped your approach to business today.
Well, everything kind of stems from one word, and it was a word that was, my parents bought a sign. It was in my nursery, and that's dream. It's really been everything. And now actually, and I apologize, but we just switched our health company from Our Health to now it is Dreamer's Health. We had a little trademark thing happen and we had to move it. And my partner was like, well, I guess maybe God was just saying, you know what, let's make it Dreamer's Health. So now it is Dreamer's Health. But that's where it all began was just every piece of my childhood was about dreaming. My dad almost made the NFL, and that from like birth. That's what I wanted to do. I said, Dad, I want to make the NFL. He was a linebacker. I was a linebacker all the way through. That's what I wanted to do. And every for whatever instance, however it happened, it just every piece of my childhood was always focused around running through the door rather than opening the door. And that's just been like something that's continued through, especially the my entrepreneurial path. But I played college football for a little while, played D1 here in Atlanta for a year, and then played D3, finished my career. Didn't really know, I always had that entrepreneurial bug, but didn't know where that was going to land. But I also always had the passion to reach back and help those that are dreaming as well, and help the next generation dream is like my entire goal, whether it's in cigars and helping the next generation dream of starting their own, Arturo Fuente or Giant brand, or whether it's dreaming of better health or whatever it might be. It's always reaching back. So that's why I decided to become a teacher. Is I said, well, yeah, I'll be able to connect with kids. I'll be a football coach. This will work. But I quickly learned that my entrepreneurial spirit didn't want to do the same thing 7 times a day for the next 40 years. Day one of teaching, I was at lunch and I was like, yeah, I'm going to have to quit. And I didn't tell anybody that, but I knew I was going to have to leave teaching right away. So I started just looking for other opportunities that could come about. And I called one of my, it was a dad of one of the guys I played football with in high school. And I knew he was flipping houses. And I said, whether it's just, I got to go dig the foundation of, well, he was a builder as well. But if I got a jackhammer or something, if I got to be the demo guy, I want to learn from you. And that's when I moved to Atlanta and just learned under him, and everything else is just kind of run its own course.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're right. A lot of people struggle with that action.
Yeah.
Right. So running through the door, like you mentioned, a lot of people will have a dreamer idea and very few actually run through the door. They get trapped with analysis paralysis. And love that you've continued to run through that door no matter what you've done. So what sparked the idea for Dreamer Cigars? Like, when did you realize it would become more than just a side project?
It was really, that came about while I was a real estate investor and I was flipping houses. I was trying to be like the HGTV guy of Instagram, like everyone else is. And I was trying to build it. And I had like 700 followers in a year. And I was like, this is not working. I got to pivot. And my wife, now, she was my girlfriend at the time. She was like, you love cigars. Why don't you review a cigar? And I was like, no, this is my peace. This is my time. I am not working while I'm smoking a cigar. But of course she was right. We reviewed one cigar. The first post hit 10,000 views. And I was like, what is happening? Bought a bunch of cigars, just said, I'm going all in. Within 3 months, we had 50,000 followers. And we just learned that, and it grew on TikTok originally, which I thought, was dancing girls or something. That was my first thing about TikTok. I hated it at the time, and now obviously it got me to where we are with Dreamer Cigars, but it really grew out of feeling a sort of accountability for the passion that I was growing about cigars. We knew that we had the next generation of cigar smokers in our audience, and it was growing rapidly because we were doing education around very simple things that, when you walk into a lounge for the first time, it's the most intimidating experience in your life. But when you've been doing it for years, you walk in, you say, hey, what's going on? And, you're relaxed. But we wanted to kind of remove that barrier of entry in the cigar world and do the beginner education. And we still do today, focus heavily on beginner education. And we just pivoted to adding in beginner pairings and starting to learn how do you pair things and what pairs well with what. That's why we partner with a bunch of different whiskey companies. And that's the way we've started to grow part of the business now. But it really grew out of a sort of, well, if we've got 50,000 followers, we owe this community a piece of what we can do, something that we can offer in a new way. And that's what we've built ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you mentioned like the lounge setting and obviously the passion for that next generation. I have my own leanings because I love cigars like you love cigars, and lounges and all the different diversity that it brings into the scenario. But that passion, talk a little bit about cigar culture for a minute. Because those that aren't cigar smokers don't necessarily get it. They just see some of us guys or gals smoking cigars, having a great time, having great conversation. They don't get the culture. And there's something really special about it. What have you observed about the cigar culture?
It was definitely one of the biggest things. When we hit a little bit of traction, we went to our first trade show in July of 2022, I believe. And that was when I really dove all head in when I started meeting the people. I think, I came from real estate. When I was a real estate investor, I also, while I was building the cigar world, I got an opportunity. I was renovating hotels as a project manager for Marriott and Hilton. So we were managing, $2 to $10 million projects. And there's in the real estate world, it's pretty cutthroat, right? It's you find people and you think they're your friend today, and then tomorrow maybe they're not. But in the cigar world, I just saw so many companies collaborating, companies promoting other people's cigars, and I was like, I didn't. It was almost like, why would you do that? Like, you should promote your own cigar. And he's like, well, that guy's a great man. And he's building a great company, and I just want to help him out if I can. And seeing that, I think it's one of the last great, really people industries that I've seen in terms of it's all about growing together and building the biggest building in town because you're all growing together rather than tearing everyone else's building down. And that was what really stuck with me very heavily, and why, honestly, I still am as passionate about it today as I was in the beginning.
And you're so right. Like, you see some of the biggest names collaborating with each other, whether it's Padron and Opus, or if it's Fuente and Rocky Patel, or like even the biggest names of the industry are collabing together and creating something special. It's really cool to see.
I mean, could you imagine Marriott and Hilton making a hotel together?
No.
Never. Right? It would never happen. Yeah, exactly. 100%.
It's awesome. So how did this thing with Dennis Rodman come about? Because I'm so curious. So I grew up in Illinois before moving up to Madison in 8th grade. So I'm a huge Bulls fan. Grew up in the 90s with Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, the whole band. Just a huge fan. And obviously he's just an absolutely eccentric personality and kind of a lightning rod for a lot of different things, especially back then. But now it seems like he's tamed out. He's not in the tabloids and all that different stuff. So tell us a little bit about that collaboration, your relationship with Dennis, and how that came about.
Yeah. So in the beginning, we started to get a lot of different traction in obviously growing the largest social media brand in the cigar industry. So a lot of new coming brands, but also even brands that have been out there were like, how I thought cigars, you couldn't post about tobacco on social media. So we kept getting a lot of different pings of people wanting us to do some consulting or different things like that. And one of the brands was Ocho Cinco, Chad Ocho Cinco. So I'm a Cincinnati boy by heart. That's where I was born. So I was like, oh, I'm going to work with Ocho Cinco for sure. And we started doing some consulting for them. And then Dennis wanted to do a cigar with Chad, and they just couldn't handle it. The bandwidth wasn't enough. And they said, do you want to do Dennis's cigar? And I said, absolutely, I do. But you talk about entrepreneurship. I had never created a cigar before at all. And it's one of those things where you run through the door, right? It's like, oh, well, that's not what we do. It's not, I have no idea how to go about this. I'm going to figure it out. Right. And that's the way it went. We had the call, started talking to Dennis's agent, and we just ran with it. And we created, if I can say so, one of the best Connecticut cigars I've ever smoked. We did 250 boxes, all signed. There's only I don't know when this is going to air, but right now there's only about 22 boxes left, but they're all signed. And working with Dennis is exactly about how you would think. But it's been such a fun ride creating that project and exploring something different. We've come out with 2 custom cigars since then for different people. Sometimes we'll make the cigar because now we kind of know the template of how to go about it. I've got great mentors in the industry, again, willing to help me build a cigar from scratch with Dennis Rodman. I've got some of the best master blenders that are like, yeah, let me know and send me a couple blends. I'll let you know my opinion. It's like, why would you let me why would you help me grow when I could take some of your business? But again, it's just a testament to the business. And it's been a lot of fun working with Dennis. That's for sure.
So talk a little bit about that, because you kind of glazed over that like it was no big deal. And for some, and I get it, you just as an entrepreneur, myself included, we just figure stuff out, but it's somewhat a curse of knowledge, because there's someone sitting here going, wait, Adam literally he's never made a cigar before, didn't know what he was doing, partners with a huge, quote unquote celebrity, and figured it out and came out with what he's calling the best Connecticut smoke he's ever had. Talk through some of that initial process to someone that has an idea and has no place where to start.
Well, in the beginning, it was definitely getting the right contacts down in Nicaragua. I knew I wanted to make a cigar out of Nicaragua. That was the very beginning. And it's just, I cold called factories. I don't speak Spanish, so some of it was tricky. But you say, is there anyone else around that can translate for us? And you keep digging until you find the right one, right? We kept exploring. But there was a guy that reached out to me pretty early, probably a year before we even launched the Dennis Rodman cigar, that ended up making it. And it wasn't a huge factory, but they had said, we would love to make the custom Dreamer Cigars cigar. And I always said, well, we do advertising. We help people grow. We want to build everyone else. We still haven't created a Dreamer cigar. So we know that we wanted to build everyone else. And so he sent us some samples, and I remembered, man, those were some pretty good smokes. And we just went through that process of figuring out, it was kind of, it was was one step at a time, right? It was one bite at a time, one step at a time, one punch at a time. I think that's a Rocky quote or something like that. But it was, what is the next thing we have to do to create this cigar for Dennis? Is it getting Dennis on board, figuring out the pricing, figuring out that piece? Dennis was really easy along the way. His agent was amazing through going through the process. But Dennis, we probably went through 8 to 10 samples, and we would blend it. He knew what he wanted. His favorite cigar, was his favorite cigar of all time, was a Monte Cristo White. So I told this factory, I said, we need to remaster this blend. We need to figure it out to make our own little twist that expresses Dennis's Dennis Rodman aura. And that's what we did. We just kept running with each little step that crafted Dennis's piece. And it really was, for me, it was solve the next problem, and then we learned the next problem, and then it solved that problem. And then it was just one thing after a time. And we also created that cigar within the parameters, of course, of making sure that it was humid enough in like near record timing of launching a cigar. I mean, it was, Dennis said, we need a cigar in X amount of time. And we said, that's like not how it's done. Like, I mean, people blend cigars over like 2 years, and we did it in about 5 months. And luckily we found the right aged tobacco, and we rolled it, and we made sure it cured for a certain amount of time that was required to make sure. If you don't allow a cigar, if you like just rolled it and then you put it in a box and you ship it, the entire box would be moldy. It was all wet when you rolled it. So we had to play with a lot of different things to make sure we got what Dennis wanted, but then also to make sure that we adhered to our name, and kept our reputation, and making sure that people knew that, one, we knew what we were doing in the cigar world, but also that we care about the process, and we understand that, we could have had a machine make it in like 2 seconds and put it out there, but we wanted a quality product, and one that Dennis could be proud of for years to come too.
Yeah, that's really cool. So for those that may have been picking up on something, they don't know cigars. So he phoned Nicaraguan tobacco companies. Connecticut is a wrapper. It's a light wrapper, but that doesn't mean that it came from the state of Connecticut. It's just the type of light wrapper of tobacco that he sourced from Nicaragua. So just wanted to put that piece together. But I love the fact that, like you're just talking about, hey, I just started cold calling. Right. Yeah. That's putting yourself out there, not knowing exactly what you're going to get, if you could do it, but you were going to put yourself out there enough to solve that next problem, like you mentioned. And that's a lot of what it takes. So many people just sit back and think that the world or the universe is just going to somehow magically create and deliver this amazing thing without them putting in the action on that great idea. That's not what happens in real life. What happens in real life is what Adam did, is making cold calls, putting himself out there to get shot down, and then figuring out each step of the process, each different issue that popped up, figuring out a solution to each of those so that he could come away with a great product. And that's what it takes. And I imagine there's 100%. Heavy investment in there, and time and money, not knowing what's going to come on the back end. And that's also a piece of the puzzle, that what it takes.
Yeah, I mean, quite candidly, it was a very interesting time in our business, and then there was a lot of other things going on that weren't exactly headed in the positive direction. And we believed in what we could build, and we invested when we technically. It was a success now, so it's great. But it was something that, investing in that project, a lot of others I would say would turn it down because of the financial state that we were in. I was still, a year and a half from quitting my job, still figuring out exactly how to monetize in the cigar industry, and I just said, an opportunity like that doesn't just come around, and I'm not going to turn it down because I'm afraid. Fear. Like they call it, false evidence appearing real, right? That's the old Les Brown quote. So, and then that's just what it is, Yeah. Like we saw the vision. Obviously, Dennis has the name, and we said, I didn't even hesitate. I said yes right away, and I knew that I knew that I didn't know enough to say yes, but I knew that I would figure it out. I knew the work ethic, it's like and I'm sure, I mean, Josh, through your journey, I can't even imagine what you've said yes to and been like, got off the phone and said, all right, here we go.
Yep.
That's, I'm along for the ride and I'm going to run and I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah. At the beginning of our journey, I'll put it like this, like there's a lot of saying yes to stuff you're uncertain about. It transitions though. Yeah. As you become really successful, it's more about saying yes to the right opportunities and no to a lot of the wrong opportunities.
I'm struggling with that right now. I can say that we've gotten, this success now, and I always want to help, because in the beginning, that's even why I grew it when I didn't even know this was going to be a business. It really just came from a piece of how can we help? And so now saying no is the thing that I'm trying to practice more and more.
Yeah. It's another skill that we have to pick up because we get so used to saying yes because we're trying to make it work. We're trying to figure things out. We're trying to make it profitable. And so we say yes to a lot of things and figure out which ones work and pour gasoline on those that do and put out the fire on those that don't. And then it's like a practice, a skill that you develop over time of saying no when you were so used to saying yes. So it's a hard pivot. So I feel your pain of what you're going through. I have some of that going on right now as well. And it's just evolutions. I think there's kind of like the stock market, there's this ebb and flow in business that we got to feel and weigh out and just have some great discernment and some wise counsel around what to say yes to and what to say no to.
And that's been the biggest thing is the mentors that have been around me and helped me not only in the cigar industry, but a couple of different business guys that have been successful. That, standing on the shoulders of giants, right? That's what I try and do the most now, and just learn that process. And, you think once you get that profitable business, you pour the gasoline on it, you think, you get to relax and you get to just enjoy the fruits of your labor. But I think entrepreneurship, I mean, in the little years that I've been able to run the race, it's absolutely the ebbs and flows. And with every step, no matter really what it is, with success comes new problems. And that wasn't something that I was anticipating. It's like, I made it. Let's keep running. But I think also, you either, if you have that entrepreneurial bug in you, you like it. We're firefighters at heart.
100%. So did you, pivoting a little bit, did you really leave a stable job, turn down a promotion the day before your wedding?
Yes. This is a fact. Yeah.
So you went all in. I mean, that takes some balls, some guts, like whatever. Like I just want to, like Alec told me that. I'm like, all right, I got to ask about that. The day before your wedding, you leave a stable job and turn down a promotion. Talk a little bit about that.
It was the first time in my life that I made a decision that wasn't based on the scale, because when you're growing up, and of course, like I said, I was a dreamer. I wanted to accomplish all these things and whatever. And while I was renovating hotels, things were going great in the business, but I was traveling I was traveling like 3 weeks at a time, and then I was home one in the office still, but then I was traveling, and because we were scaling the business and it was growing like crazy wildfire, I was the third person hired in that company. And now, they've got a private jet and I think they're up to 40, 50 employees. And so that company scaled so fast, and that was 3 years ago. So that company is just blowing up like crazy. And it was the first time that I realized, what do I want my life to look like? Starting to craft your dream life rather than your dream job, and I had my now wife, she moved down to Atlanta with me when I quit teaching. She didn't have a job. She had just graduated college. I was working $20 an hour to learn real estate investing and flipping houses. And she said, okay, let's move to a new city and let's just run and let's dream. And she was so supportive all along. And then it just got to the point to where the travel, they asked me at one point, we had a superintendent quit he was out of Oregon. They said, you got to fly to Portland, and we'll fly you home the day before your wedding. And I was like, guys, flight gets canceled, what do we do? Like, come on. And I knew the CEO very, very well. And I just looked at him and I said, is this the industry? Is this what we're building? Is this the way it works? And he's like, it's kind of just the way it works. And I said, well, this isn't the dream life that I want. I want to be there to see my son play football on Fridays. If I'm blessed with a son. I have a daughter now. I had one. She's 4 months tomorrow. But I was like, I want to be there. That's the dream life that I want. I will figure this out. And I had success in the cigar world by then. I think we had almost 100,000 followers. We were getting probably like, I don't know, $500 a month on like some like advertising posts. And I was like, well, I've got some other avenues I can run with. And I know that this is just not going to end up being what I want out of life. And out of honestly, I was courteous to them. I loved the CEO. I loved the vice president. And I was like, guys, you're building this company, with planning for me to, work up and be a workhorse in the beginning and then move up. But I don't want you to build a company on a guy that's not in this long term. So out of respect for you guys, I'm going to bow out. I'll help you in whatever way we need to do a transition, but I'm going to bow out. This isn't what I want for my family. One, not only do I want to be there for my wedding, but I want to recognize, the lady walking down the aisle when they open the doors and be like, I remember you. I was traveling a bunch, but I remember you. And that's the way I wanted. And it really came that moment. Of course, I regretted it, not regretted it, but I debated it for a very long time. I'm now making more than I was then, but it took a while to replace that income. And, there were days where, it was, I think the closest I ever came was 8 days from not paying the mortgage. And, you figure it out and you fight and you sleepless nights and all that sort of thing. It was all of that process. But it really came full circle when we had our daughter in December and I was there. Yeah. And there was a potential that I maybe wouldn't have been there, right? With that other job, if it would have scaled to this big company and they're like, dude, we're meeting with, the owner of 17 hotels and you got to be there. And, I remember holding her and I just started crying and I was like, all of that work was worth it. And it looked like the stupidest decision from everybody. We were like having fun at our wedding dancing and I'm like, I'm unemployed. We went our honeymoon. I said, I get 7 days. I get 7 days of not freaking out and not trying to figure this out. I'm going to enjoy getting married and I'm going to do this. But then it's running through every door that comes in the way. Right. So it really came full circle now. And it's a very, very big reward for all that work to be able to know, like, and now I work from home and I get, I see, I feed my baby every morning and I'm like, wow, this is different level, different reward.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So I had 3 daughters first and then came a son. But I remember, holding my first daughter for the first time and looking, down at her, and she was so tiny. She was born 5 weeks early. But that first time that little girl looks up at you and smiles, you are done. Like the yep. term daddy's little girl is coined that moment.
Yeah.
And so she's just a few months 100%. Old now, right? So how's your sleep schedule?
Well, it was funny. Everybody was like, how are you sleeping? How are you sleeping? And I was like, that would insinuate that I was sleeping before. I'm like, mine's not actually terribly different. I've always been kind of just the early riser. I like getting everything. It's actually like kind of like my time, right? There's no emails coming in. I wake up every morning at 4 and I just, that's when I get, honestly, probably my most productive work outside of, calls and different things like that. But so yeah, it was pretty funny when, my wife and I are creating that schedule, like, when are you going to feed, when are you waking up with the, baby and stuff. And I was like, well, when 4 o'clock rolls around, you sleep till 10, I'll watch the baby. And there's no problem. You can, as long as you take that so I can work during the day. Cause the other piece is, it was a brand new adventure of I don't get paternity leave or anything like that. So, it's like every day, like the day of the birth, it's like I wasn't on calls or anything, but it's like we got to manage everything going on, even in the hospital. I got to be like answering a couple emails and then being with my wife. So it was definitely a challenge in that sense, but the sleep schedule, that was the funny part. Everybody's like, you sleeping? And I was like, I wasn't really sleeping that much before.
Yeah.
Keeping all these, the one company that, it's more on the side, but it's starting to grow a little bit is Dreamer Marketing. So I have another one. So I'm like, and now we just built this startup in Dreamer's Health. So it's like, when you're running 3 companies, like you don't really have that much time to sleep.
Yeah, you're right. I remember one of my brothers was in the tech world, and he got like 3 or 6 months, I can't remember which, of paternity leave. And I had never, like, being an entrepreneur since I was 24, like that was not even in my vocabulary. And I was like, oh, that's really good for you. I mean, it's good for the baby, good for you. I just know nothing about that. Totally relate to that. So Dreamer Cigars has over 200 million views, like I mentioned. Like I'm in the, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of views. You've gotten over 200 million views, but what's been cool to see is you've stayed really grounded and mission driven. How do you balance the visibility with integrity? Because I know when you get to that much, and you got this big audience, there can be pressures to a lot of different pressures, but I just want to speak to you on that visibility versus integrity with what you're doing with the mission.
So making sure that we stay branded in what we're rooted in, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. Instead of succumbing to the outside pressures of, hey, we want to see more of this and we want this.
Yeah, I think, it's been interesting as we've grown. I actually 2 days ago just got back from the largest trade show every year. And there's always this, especially when I go to the trade show, people are like, what you talk about, everyone knows. Why do you keep talking about it? And I said, clearly not everyone. If we've got 200 million views, right? Like, it's like, if everybody knew it, I think they would stop watching, but they're still watching. And it's staying. I don't know. I think part of it just goes back to it's an interesting question. It really hasn't been that difficult is why I'm struggling to answer it, because it's what got us here. And it's the way, I think it was just my upbringing, my dad and my mom, that the integrity piece was always very important. So I would say they deserve that credit more than I do. In that part. And it's just about also being loyal to the people that helped you get there. Yeah. Right. And all of these, of course, we have struggled in the sense of like, well, I've been following you for 2, 3, 4 years. I'm ready for the next level. And there's another guy in the cigar industry. Alec knows him very well. Tim Swanson, he does higher level stuff. And Tim and I have talked. He's like, are you going to, is it going to be competitive? And I said, the way I look at it is people enter the cigar world through me and then they graduate to you. I'm the high school, or not high school, like people are smoking that age, but you do that entry level education and they go on to the next level with him. And we've landed a good niche with it. And I've never been mad at other people having success and Tim growing. I mean, since we've grown, he has grown exponentially as well. And, I'm not going to sit here and take credit for that. What Tim does is really good work, but I'd have to think that it's part of that graduation process that I'm thinking about is, we've got 200 million, we've got 291,000 subscribers on YouTube. And we passed him at one point. He was the giant in the game when I entered. And then he kind of skyrocketed past us. I think he's at like 315. So now we're like kind of right there. But our views are on a higher scale than his. But it's like, it's beautiful, again, to see the buildings grow together. Yeah. And go up that way. So that's, I don't know. I know that wasn't a great way to answer your question. I'm sorry. But no, the integrity, I'd have to give to my parents. Yeah, no, it's perfectly fine. My answer has always been this, because I'm sure you get hit up frequently, but with DMs and, marketing boosters and buy followers and all these different things.
And I've never answered one of them, because my model is to be an impactor, not an influencer. We already have too many influencers, like you said, dancing girls on TikToks and all the different stuff. That's not me. I want to be of impact and of service to the world, not have the biggest following. Now, if that comes along with me doing what's true to me, being of impact, cool. But I'm not going to buy followers and not do any of those marketing boosters and the DMs. They're all very flattering, like, hey, your content's great. You should have way more followers than you do. Sure. But I'm going to be of impact and service to the world first. So tell us a little bit about DC University. What gap is it filling, and how does it reflect your leadership philosophy?
DC University, I'm not going to lie, we haven't started that. And are you talking about in terms of the education piece?
Well, I'm not sure.
In the cigar world?
Alec put it on the questionnaire, so we can skip
over that one.
Yeah.
That was something we were going to build a while ago. So maybe it was one of those things we put the fire out on.
All right, cool. All right, we'll skip over that. So, what's the biggest challenge you faced as a leader in a regulated and often misunderstood industry?
Shoo, that is a very hard part. I would say the biggest thing is trusting the process and believing that despite those doors are steel. Those are not little wooden doors we're running through with those. It's been several times where, countless, 20, 30, 40, 50 times where we were like, why are we doing this? Right? The industry is so regulated. Let's try and have success in another area. At the end of the day, it was probably out of necessity, and a maybe a blind belief that we can keep trucking forward, doing our thing, and we'll find the right path. We'll find that right fire to put the gasoline on. Alec will tell you, when we first met, I probably changed my business model in Dreamer Cigars, 30 times in what we were trying to do. The advertising's always been there, but it's always impossible to look at somebody and say, hey, yeah, well, we just got 200 million views, pay me X. And they're like, just because you have 200 million views doesn't mean we have a bigger marketing budget, because cigar companies don't have a large marketing budget because you can't market in cigars. It's, there's like Cigar Aficionado, there's a couple magazines, and that's it. No one's ever had the type of reach that we've had on social media. So it's really, I guess, being the trailblazer and paving the path for other people that will come behind. But even Tim Swanson in Cigars Daily, he's always done it for his own lounge. He owns a lounge and an online shop. So he's never really been focused on that piece and helping build other brands. So it's really just been keeping the head down and trying to find that right fire to build that we're going to be able to pour some gasoline on. And I'm proud to say that this, I think, was February of this year that we kept the same business model for more than 12 months.
That's
so
awesome.
I'm glad to say that we've found the right fire, and we're pouring as much gasoline on it as we can. And this past trade show that we just had, it spoke volumes about what we've found, and rather than selling, we were getting pitched, and it kind of changed the whole game for us. So it was very refreshing to have that, but also satisfying to know we stuck it out.
Yeah, there's like this exit velocity when you hit a certain mode or time or exposure in your business, where you finally start getting traction and things start coming to you versus you having to push and push and push that flywheel. The flywheel starts moving on its own, but it doesn't come without all of that blood, sweat, and tears and all that pushing until things start coming. Like, I just noticed that this year because I sold my big business almost 4 years ago. In the last 3 years, it's just been figuring it out and trying different things, seeing which worked, which didn't, also which things brought me energy and which didn't. There was some of that testing that was going on. And, this year I've had more and more opportunities just come to me versus me having to make those outreaches And it's quite rewarding, but then it's flexing that muscle of which ones are right and which ones are not, and having that level of discernment. But man, that's awesome. The last topic I wanted to touch on was your Dreamer's health, because it's interesting. I went through a whole rebrand earlier this year, and on my website was me in a suit with a great Opus cigar. And the guys on the team were like, Josh, we know you love cigars. However, you talk about health way more. And that's part of your ethos. It's part of who you are. And so we got as good of a picture as that is, that doesn't represent your brand. And so that is now off the website. And it is not a part of what you initially see. It's what you get to know with me, is that I appreciate and love great cigars. But it was interesting. So they don't necessarily go together, right? Health and cigars, at least from a perception. Now, you and I have enough education to know that they're not that distant from each other, because they're not like cigarettes and they're not like chewing tobacco and stuff of that nature. You and I have that education, but the general public does not. So we got to represent a different brand, here and there, as I've learned. So talk a little bit like, what legacy are you trying to build with Dreamer's Health, and how are you leading through that dichotomy of the cigar brand and health brand?
Yeah, well, it's definitely an interesting pivot, and I've gotten plenty of calls. Like Alec called me and was like, "What on earth are you? What are you doing now? I thought you were in the cigar world, and you're hopping over here." I think it stems from I think we're very similar in that aspect. It's always been a very big focus of mine. I had to go very heavily on focusing on dieting and stuff when I was playing college football, because I wasn't huge. I mean, people don't look at me and go, you probably were a college linebacker, but I'm 40 pounds lighter than I was then. Like, it was just a different level. And I always appreciated that world. And I think it really came from one of my mentors. He's had this idea for 15 years, and he brought me in and said, you know what, I want to build a business with you. I want to build a business together. This is going to be one of my last swings, and I want to build this. He showed me the model, showed me what we wanted to build. And I said, absolutely, let's run with it. And it's really something that now is so rewarding to build something. Of course, it's been really rewarding to see people get into the cigar world and not kind of overcome that fear and stuff, but it's a different level to know that we're going to have impact on people's lives and certain diseases, and connect so many different people. Just doing I don't know how many we have out, but the 4 to 6 podcasts that we've done now in the health world, from talking to a father whose son went through 2.5 years of battling leukemia from 2 to 4.5 years old, to interviewing a breast cancer survivor, a congressman that was the only congressman that treated patients during COVID, and looking at all those different spaces, it's clear that there's so much more impact. And I can take all the skills that I've learned in building the cigar company and building the social media piece of the cigar world, and bring that to the masses and really connect this, world that seems so, it is huge. Obviously, the healthcare industry is ginormous, but at the same time, it seems so behind the times. Mm-hmm. It seems so like there's, now Huberman and those guys are doing certain things, but we're looking at doing it kind of in a different way. We don't want to be the Huberman podcast where it's doctor and doctor interviewing each other. We want to bring the stories of the people together, and the people that are really going through it together, and in a community sense. So, I'll never forget, my buddy was the guy who had his son go through leukemia and battle leukemia for 2.5 years. And when I was first presented with this opportunity, I said, what do you think about this idea? He said, all I ever wanted was to find another dad in my area that I could have a cigar with that was going through the same thing. He said, because I could have called you, and he did. And he was like, but you would never understand. Mm-hmm. There's no way you could comprehend what it's like to give your son 8 shots every month. And if you watch the episode, it's crazy that I didn't cry during the episode, but you get so focused on the podcast, I guess. But his son would just be like, please, daddy, no pokey. And it's like, but you're administering him chemo. And it's those stories in that industry, it gives me passion beyond belief to just wake up in the morning and fight for those people. So it's been an interesting transition from the outside, but anybody who similar to you, anybody who knows me, they haven't really been surprised. It's a clear path forward.
That's awesome. I've done a lot of raising money for childhood cancer, raised over $1.5 million for Alex's lemonade stand. And we did an Easter egg hunt where we just invited the community and said, hey, we created a list because we got it from the UW Children's Hospital of things, toys, crayons, whatever, to bring to the hospital. And that's all we asked as a donation. No, and then all the kids could go get as much Easter eggs and candy as they wanted. So I go to the hospital and with a few people on my team, deliver all this. All the kids are excited to come down. And within 5 minutes, I had to walk out. All I saw was one of my kids like that. And I was just a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Absolutely.
Can totally identify with your story, talking to your friend, having gone through that with his own son. Like you just, as a parent, it's your, worst nightmare. So it's a big deal. I love the mission, and it is very, very needed. And I didn't even mention this, but I also played football in college, a little D3 ball up at University of Wisconsin Whitewater. And I gone through ebbs and flows with my health. And we, there's times where you're building the business and health becomes less of a focus, working out on a regular basis because you're just putting in 12, 14, 16-hour days. And you're like, I don't have time for that. And I learned through that. I was my mid-30s, but I was like, okay, I've gotten to the pinnacle of my career and I own this very large business, and I've let that slide. And at that time, it was before we had our son, I had 3 little girls, and I was like, I got to do everything in my power to walk them down the aisle someday, to be there in their arm. Like, I know God has a lot to say about that, but I got to do everything in my power to be there for them as long as I possibly can. And that was my pivot. Amen. That was my why, to just pivot and say, okay, health is a focus. It's not a selfish thing. It's a selfless thing. Now, you can tilt the scale and go too selfish with it. I want to be clear on that. However, it is selfless. It's actually my pivot point. I'll give you guys a little insight. I ruck in the morning, but then late afternoon, I go work out. I have a 25-minute commute between the farm and my home. And in between then, I stop at my workout facility, and that's to get recharged to be able to be the man, the husband, the father that I need to be when I go home. And my kids are in extracurriculars now where my girls are all competitive dancers, and Cam's got other things going on sports-wise. So they don't get home till 7 to 9 p.m. anyhow. So I have that time to transition. And I think that that's a good practice, instead of just leaving the office with all the weight on your shoulders from your business or from your, if you're entrepreneur, same thing. You're leaving the office with all these problems or issues that you've dealt with throughout the day, and then you bring those home with you. But how about you just figured out a routine or a pivot point like I do of going to work out, kind of letting the load out of all the weight on your shoulders, bang out some weights, take it out on the weights, and then go home a recharged and better human being to your family. Like, that's a better modal. Now, you could do it differently. You could go home and take a walk with the dogs or whatever it may be, but figure out your way to walk in that door at home. Your most important job is at home, a better human being. Just figure that out for yourselves.
I love that. Yeah. It's, working from home, I've had to do it in different creative ways. But yeah, that's 100% what it is. It was a big, when I, have started to have this success, nowhere to what you have built in the past, but, starting to have the success, you do start to think, okay, I didn't really take care of myself during that time, but it's not like that was being lazy. It was, your priorities were straight to get the money straight. And then, now that we've got, kind of our finances in a good space, it's definitely a bigger focus of mine of saying, all right, go to the gym, even on some business things. It's like, well, now it's at least on an even playing field, you could obviously, as an entrepreneur, you could work 24 hours a day if you really wanted to. But prioritizing, you know what, I'm going to leave a little early, or I'm going to leave on time, but I'm going to take that time to go to the gym. I'm going to hit the weights. I'm going to get that out of the way and then go home. Yeah. I love that.
That's awesome. 100% on that. I hope everyone takes a little bit away from that. And from this whole conversation, it's been amazing to hear the entrepreneurial journey, because that's what I hope to bring to people on this podcast is the real raw truth about it is like, it's hard and it's doable. And you just got to keep running through doors like Adam has done, not knowing exactly what to do, but having the faith in yourself to figure it out. And continue to evolve yourself and learn and grow and make sure that you're doing the best for yourself, your family, your company, all the employees, all of those things all those people and things that need us. It requires us to be our best selves. And that's why I love the pivot to the health for you, especially with your background, is they come hand in hand. They're one and the same. In order for us to be successful, we got to focus on our health. Because what I've also realized, because I had a scare 2 years ago where I got a bad infection while I was doing 75 hard and ended up in the hospital for a couple of days with an acute kidney injury. And you lay there in the hospital, or anyone that's had a health scare, and you're just like you can have a million problems in the world, but you have a health issue, you have one problem. Yeah. And so that's why we have to take care of our health as much as we do, or as much as we can control it. We got to control it.
And that was a big piece on that note. I actually had a similar health scare, and it was the year that I quit my job. It was actually 4 months before. I was working on a job in San Francisco, and my appendix actually ruptured. But we were moving furniture, so I thought it was like a hernia. So I didn't know that it was that. And there was poison just going around in my body. So 3 days later is when I finally ended up in the hospital. And yeah, the doctor looked at me like, yeah, you should be dead. I don't know how. They said they took the CT scan or whatever, and they were like, we can't even see your appendix, but it's pretty clear what it is. Like, the infection had spread to my armpit from my appendix. It was everywhere. And they were like, we can't even go in. It's too dangerous of a surgery. So yeah, I mean, that again, yeah, that it probably led to me realizing, you know what, like, this is a great job, but to be with my wife, to be with my future children, that was way more important than, and I knew I could build something like this. I believed in, I was like, well, I'm going to have to take a step back to take a step forward later. But yeah, so I had a similar health scare. So I completely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. Well, before we go, where can everyone follow you personally? And then obviously the cigar, if they want to get more into the cigar world, learn the basics and get more ingrained in that, give them the YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, so Dreamer Cigars is, you type that in on any platform, you're going to find us. On Instagram, there's an underscore at the end, but you'll see we have golden wings around, so you'll see the Dreamer Cigars logo. You type that in anywhere. I mean, we have 150,000 views on Pinterest every month. Like, you type it in anywhere, we're pretty much there. So we've covered the gamut there. And then personally, it's really mostly the Instagram is at Adam Guard underscore at the end for that as well. And that's where I'll be doing some more personal brand stuff probably here soon, but Dreamer's Health mostly on there, and then anywhere else, Dreamer's Health, you can find us there as well as we release some new podcasts about that.
That's awesome. Well, I had the idea as we're coming up here on time that you and I definitely need to, and Alec obviously, host a big cigar event here at the property. We'll get some other people here. You can bring Dennis if you want.
If I want casual, yeah. You're just going to slide that in.
Yeah,
huh?
Yeah. If you want to bring Dennis, that'd be cool too. Reminisce a little bit about me and my teenage years, watching them just go on a tear, and it just brought me a lot of joy in the 90s watching them win.
Well, I can promise you this. I don't know if Dennis will go, but I can promise you this. I'll send you a box.
That'd be awesome. I appreciate it. I know Alec would as well. He and I enjoy a lot of cigars here on the property. The only spot you can't smoke on this property is in the house. Everywhere else is free game. Yeah. But this has been an awesome conversation. Everybody, give Adam a follow. Learn more about Dreamer Cigars. Fantastic company doing big things and will continue to do big things. Dreamer's Health. And remember to share this far and wide. Always remember the good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.